I grabbed my keys with shaking hands, my coffee mug crashing to the floor as I bolted for the door. Rachel's voice still echoed in my ears from our phone call moments ago, each word more chilling than the last. "You need to see this right now. Don't call anyone else. Just come." The drive to my rental property felt like it took forever, even though I was pushing 15 miles over the speed limit. My mind raced through possibilities. A broken pipe? Structural damage? Nothing could have prepared me for what Rachel had actually discovered. I'd been in the rental property business for 7 years. What started as a single vacation home had grown into a portfolio of 5 properties scattered across the city. I'd always prided myself on being a hands-on owner, someone who cared about their guests' experiences. That's why I'd hired Derek Thompson 3 years ago. He came with impeccable references, a background in property management, and an almost obsessive attention to detail that I'd mistaken for professionalism. Rachel was different from my usual guests. She'd booked a month-long stay, explaining she needed a quiet place to work remotely on a major project. What she hadn't mentioned in her booking was that she worked in cybersecurity for a major tech firm, specializing in detecting unauthorized surveillance systems. It was a skill set that would save not just her, but dozens of other innocent people. She'd noticed something odd on her second day, a tiny reflection where there shouldn't have been one. Most people would have dismissed it, but Rachel's training had taught her to trust her instincts. She'd started scanning the property with apps designed to detect hidden cameras, and what she found had made her blood run cold. I pulled into the driveway at exactly 9:47 in the morning. Rachel was waiting by the front door, her laptop bag slung over her shoulder, and an expression on her face I'd never forget. She looked simultaneously furious and terrified. "Thank you for coming so quickly," she said, her voice tight. "I need you to stay calm and listen to everything before you react." We walked inside together, and Rachel pulled out a tablet. On the screen was a grid of live video feeds. My rental property, multiple angles, bedroom, bathroom, living room, kitchen, even a small reading nook by the window. "These are all currently recording," Rachel explained, her finger tracing across the screen. "I found the first camera yesterday morning. It was in the bathroom, hidden inside what looked like an air freshener. That made me suspicious, so I did a complete sweep with professional detection equipment." My stomach turned as she showed me each location. The camera in the shower was disguised as a screw head in the tile. The one in the main bedroom was embedded in what appeared to be a phone charger permanently plugged into the wall. The living room had 2 cameras, one in a decorative picture frame and another in what I'd always assumed was a functioning smoke detector. "There are 11 cameras total in this property," Rachel continued. "All high definition, all with night vision capability, and all streaming to an external server. But that's not the worst part." She opened her laptop and showed me something that made my hands start trembling. It was a website clearly operating on the dark web based on the URL structure. And there, listed among dozens of other locations, was my property. The listing advertised live HD feeds from luxury vacation rental with pricing tiers. $12.99 per hour for live viewing access. $24.99 for recorded highlight packages. $49.99 for full archive access. The view counter showed the page had been accessed over 3,000 times. The recordings catalog listed over 200 hours of footage already captured and sold. I felt like I might be sick. "How long has this been happening?" Rachel's expression was grim. Based on the file timestamps I was able to access, at least 18 months, possibly longer. 18 months. I thought about all the guests who'd stayed at this property during that time. Families, couples, solo travelhos. All of them violated in the most intimate way possible without ever knowing. "We need to find where the equipment is," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "The receivers, the storage, everything." Rachel nodded. I tracked the signal. "It's coming from inside the property, somewhere in the basement." The basement had always been off limits to guests, marked as owner's storage in the listing. Derek had the only other key besides mine, and he'd always insisted on handling anything related to that space. Now I understood why. We descended the wooden stairs, and I turned on every light. The basement looked exactly as I remembered it. Storage boxes, old furniture, a water heater and furnace. Nothing seemed out of place. Rachel pulled out a signal detector and slowly swept the room. The device started beeping more insistently near the back wall, behind a tall shelf unit I'd placed there years ago. Together, we moved the shelf. Behind it, barely visible, was a seam in the drywall that shouldn't have been there. I pressed against it, and a section of wall swung inward on hidden hinges, revealing a small space I'd never known existed. Inside was a setup that looked like something from a surveillance movie. Multiple monitors, all currently displaying live feeds from the cameras throughout the house. A high-end computer with external hard drives stacked beside it. A commercial-grade network router. Professional video editing equipment. Invoice papers scattered across a small desk. I picked up one of the invoices with shaking hands. $8,347 for camera equipment purchased 14 months ago. The billing name was Derek Thompson, but the shipping address was this property. My property manager had literally built a surveillance room in my own rental property, and I'd never had a clue. Rachel was already photographing everything with her phone. Don't touch anything else. We need to preserve this as evidence. My phone started buzzing in my pocket. Derek. I declined the call. It immediately started ringing again. He knows, Rachel said quietly. The system probably has alerts set up. He knows someone's accessed the basement. Over the next hour, Derek called 43 times. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, Rachel and I documented everything. She used her professional forensic software to create a complete map of the system, tracking where data was being stored and transmitted. What she found was even worse than we'd initially thought. Derek hadn't just been recording. He'd been actively monitoring the feeds, sometimes for hours at a time. The software logs showed him logging in daily, often late at night. He'd created a tagging system, categorizing clips by type of content. Some files were marked premium and had been uploaded to multiple platforms. The cloud storage account linked to the system contained folders for 11 other properties. 11. This wasn't just about my rental. Derek had systematically installed surveillance equipment in rental properties all across the city. By 3 o'clock in the morning, neither Rachel nor I had slept. We'd spent the entire day and evening going through evidence, making copies of everything, and preparing a comprehensive report. Finally, we called the police. The detective who arrived was named Sarah Martinez. She'd worked in cybercrime for 12 years, and when we showed her what we'd found, even she looked shocked. This is one of the most extensive illegal surveillance operations I've seen in a residential context, she said, carefully examining the basement setup. We're going to need to bring in the FBI. This crosses state lines because of the online distribution. The investigation that followed was massive. Federal agents seized Derek's home computer and found the full extent of his operation. He'd been running this scheme for 3 years, generating an average of $40,000 per month. His subscriber base included 3,849 paying members from 17 different countries. The properties he targeted were all managed through different agencies or by individual owners like myself. He'd specifically sought out positions where he'd have unsupervised access for maintenance and setup. In some cases, he'd even volunteered to do free upgrades or improvements, which owners had gratefully accepted, never knowing he was installing surveillance equipment. The FBI arrested Derek at 6:15 in the morning, 5 days after Rachel's initial discovery. Agents found him frantically trying to delete files from multiple devices, but Rachel's early forensic work had already created backups of everything. There was no way for him to erase what he'd done. I was there when they brought him out in handcuffs. He looked at me once, and I saw no remorse in his eyes. Only anger that he'd been caught. The legal process took 9 months. Derek's attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the evidence was overwhelming. Video logs, financial records, testimony from dozens of victims who'd stayed at the properties he'd violated. In the end, he pleaded guilty to 127 felony counts, including illegal surveillance, distribution of private images, wire fraud, and computer crimes. The judge sentenced him to 15 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for at least 10 years. She called his actions a profound betrayal of trust and a violation of the most basic human right to privacy. But the legal victory didn't undo the damage. I had to contact every single guest who'd stayed at my property during the time the cameras were active. Those conversations were some of the hardest things I've ever done. Some people cried, some screamed, some just went silent, and that silence was somehow worse. I hired a professional security firm to sweep all my properties. They found cameras in 2 others, though not as extensive as the main property. I had every single unit completely renovated, replacing anything Derek had ever touched. The costs ran into 6 figures, but I didn't care. I needed to know my properties were safe. Rachel became more than just a guest. She became a partner in creating something positive from this nightmare. Together, we founded a victim support network specifically for people affected by rental property surveillance. We created educational materials for property owners about security, developed a certification program for legitimate property managers, and worked with lawmakers to strengthen privacy protections. Our network has now helped 89 other property owners who discovered similar violations. Some cases were as extensive as Derek's operation. Others were isolated incidents. But each one represented real people whose privacy had been stolen, and we were determined to help them reclaim it. I also completely changed how I operated my business. Now I personally inspect every property monthly. I hired an independent security consultant who does quarterly sweeps. I installed tamper-evident seals on all utility areas and created transparent maintenance logs that guests can access. Most importantly, I educated myself about surveillance technology so I'd never be caught unaware again. The experience changed Rachel too. She left her corporate job and now runs a consulting firm that specializes in detecting illegal surveillance in residential properties. She's testified before Congress twice about the need for stronger regulations. Her company has uncovered surveillance operations in apartment buildings, hotels, and rental properties across the country. Sometimes I think about how easily this could have continued if Rachel hadn't been the guest who happened to book that property at that specific time. How many more people would have been violated? How much longer would Derek's operation have run? The truth is that hidden surveillance in rental properties is far more common than most people realize. Studies estimate that illegal cameras are present in approximately 1 in every 250 short-term rental properties. The technology has become so small and inexpensive that it's frighteningly easy for someone with bad intentions to deploy. I made it my mission to change that. I speak at property management conferences now, sharing my story and teaching other owners what to look for. I've created free, downloadable guides for guests about how to check for hidden cameras. I've worked with rental platforms to implement stronger verification processes for property managers. The financial impact on my business was significant. I lost bookings for months as word spread about what had happened. My insurance rates tripled. The renovation costs nearly bankrupted me. But slowly, by being completely transparent about what occurred and what I'd done to prevent it from ever happening again, I rebuilt trust. Now, 3 years later, my properties are thriving again. But they're different. Every listing includes detailed information about my security protocols. I've installed visible security cameras at all entrances with clear signage because I want guests to know their safety is my priority. I provide information about how to detect hidden cameras and encourage guests to do their own checks. Some people told me I was crazy to be so open about what happened. They said it would scare away customers. But I found the opposite was true. People appreciated the honesty. They felt safer knowing I took security seriously and had learned from a terrible experience. Rachel and I still talk regularly. She's become one of my closest friends, bonded by the traumatic experience we shared and the positive work that came from it. Her consulting business is booming, and she's helped hundreds of people secure their properties and their privacy. Derek is currently serving his sentence in a federal facility in Pennsylvania. He'll be eligible for parole in 7 years, though given the nature of his crimes and the number of victims, it's unlikely he'll be granted early release. When he does eventually get out, he'll be a registered sex offender, prohibited from working in property management or any field involving unsupervised access to private residences. The victims from his surveillance operation received a settlement from a civil lawsuit, funded partly by the seizure of Derek's assets and partly by insurance. It doesn't undo what happened to them, but at least it provides some acknowledgement of the harm they suffered. I think about this experience every single day. It taught me that trust must be earned continuously, not just given once. It showed me that vigilance isn't paranoia when it comes to protecting people's privacy. And it reminded me that sometimes the worst violations come from people we've invited into our lives, people we thought we could trust. The rental property business is built on trust. Owners trust guests to respect their properties. Guests trust owners to provide safe, private spaces. When that trust is broken, the damage ripples outward in ways that are hard to fully measure. But I also learned that from terrible situations can come meaningful change. The network Rachel and I created has genuinely helped people. The awareness we've raised has led to better security practices across the industry. The legislative changes we advocated for have made it harder for predators like Derek to operate. If you're a property owner, I urge you to take security seriously. Do regular inspections. Vet your property managers thoroughly. Stay educated about surveillance technology. And if you discover something wrong, act immediately and transparently. If you're a guest, know your rights. Learn how to check for hidden cameras. Trust your instincts. And if something feels wrong, speak up. Rachel's decision to investigate that tiny reflection she noticed saved countless people from further violation. The vacation rental industry has brought joy to millions of people, providing memorable experiences and comfortable spaces away from home. But it only works when everyone involved operates with integrity and respect for privacy. What happened with Derek was a betrayal of everything everything this industry should represent. I'm grateful that Rachel was the person who discovered Derek's operation. I'm grateful for the law enforcement officers who took the case seriously and built an airtight prosecution. I'm grateful for the victims who found the courage to come forward and testify. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to turn something horrible into something that helps protect others. The property where this all began is still operating. It's been completely renovated, and it's now one of my most popular listings. I've turned the basement where Derek's surveillance room once existed into a bright, open storage area with glass doors, so there's nowhere to hide anything. Every time a guest checks in, I think about the responsibility I have to protect their privacy and safety. It's a responsibility I'll never take lightly again. If you enjoyed this story, like and subscribe.